In this video, I'm going to walk you through a day in the life of an OpsRamp user to showcase how our service-centric AIOps platform can dramatically reduce MTTR in your organization. Now we'll need an alert to start things off, so I'm going to trigger an OpsRamp alert here. What I'm doing is pegging a resource to 100% CPU, and now here we can see OpsRamp has already notified me via email. Now, if we click into this email, it's the first area where we're showcasing the service-centric nature of our platform, and that while I can see below here the resource that was impacted, up top I can also see that this is essentially impacting our payroll system. Now, of course, these emails are completely configurable, and they're also click-through. I could drill into the ID of the alert itself, I could step straight to the resource, or even acknowledge the alert from this email. What I'm going to do instead is transition over into the NOC, because they're also on top of this outage already. I'll give a quick refresh here. Now what you're seeing from this view is a sample dashboard available in the OpsRamp platform. These dashboards are very easy to create. We have many custom as well as canned widgets available. They are, as you can see, drag and drop, supporting full responsive design. And they're also role-driven. So as you can imagine within an organization, these dashboards are essentially created and dished out by persona. So this dashboard we're looking at here, I've outlined 3 of our core business applications. Just to give you a couple other examples, if I'm an organization that leverages AWS or GCP or any of the cloud offerings out there, I might have a team or at least a few individuals that support those cloud resources. So this would be a great example dashboard for some of those individuals. Likewise, to talk a little bit about future-proofing, right? Not only can OpsRamp discover, but we can also monitor and pull back metrics on containers. So Docker and Kubernetes are supported. And so organizations leveraging these newer technologies can certainly also bring OpsRamp in and get visibility from here. Now, all of these widgets are pretty much click-through. So if I drill into any one of them, I can expand them out and drill down to resources or drill down to the metrics underneath. Finally, if we step into an individual application dashboard, this is showing the payroll service itself. Again, for an application owner or for a team that is a business service owner, a great view into things like availability, the status of downstream resources, as well as any downtimes, things like response times. And as you can see here, because OpsRamp also provides synthetic monitoring as well as URL monitoring, I have some of those metrics available to me as well. But back to our story. We started off, we've received an email, there's an alert that's happening. Our folks in the NOC have recognized that as well from a dashboard. And so what's that storyline look like? In most organizations, one of 2 things happens, right? Either we alt-tab between 3 or 4 or 5 different monitoring tools or various technology consoles to try to arrive at root cause. Or we spool up a war room and we get some of our most highly paid individuals to join that war room. We all look at our separate consoles to try to figure out what's going on. And so really the first step towards reducing MTTR is to pull a lot of that information into one place, which is what we've done here at OpsRamp. So I'm going to step into the actual payroll application. And what this is taking me to is really an operational map of this service, showing the various subcomponents that do make up, in this case, the payroll application. I'm going to take a couple minutes here before we drill to the root of this particular issue to show you a few things that we can do here, really the actionable nature as well as that single pane of glass, right? Being able to pull in information that's actionable from these various technologies. So we're going to start here on the left. We can see that payroll certainly relies on our vCenter infrastructure to be functional. And so if I step over here into resources and we drill into, in this case, the vCenter itself, here's where I can interact with the various virtual machines. Here's where I can look at the various monitors and metrics. I have certainly attribute information as well. And ultimately, if I want to start understanding impact, right from this view, I can drill in fact, let's expand this out, into one of our topology maps. Now, we have automatically mapped out the relationships that exist here within this vCenter. And while this is a pretty picture to look at, so to speak, really the reason we're mapping these things out is so that OpsQ, which is our machine learning algorithms in the middle of the platform, can learn how to more intelligently correlate inbound alerts, and in this case, targeted towards topology. So if I lose this particular vCenter as a whole, we would correlate up all the downstream alerts so that I would only get one email, one text message, or perhaps one ticket opened in my ticketing system. Now, if we step back for a second, you can see I've also got storage that's supporting payroll. And if we drill in here, we can see that I've got a cluster in NetApp. And so I can drill into that cluster. I can access things like dashboards and drill all the way down to things like disks and aggregates, all this information available to me in one place. Now, some of you might be thinking, well, of course, but I could log into NetApp, or I could talk to my folks in the storage area, and they could look at that console. But I'm going to argue that by pulling this into one space, by giving my frontline technicians in the NOC access to see this information, they're going to certainly arrive at root cause a lot quicker than if we do have to spool up that war room so we can all look at our separate consoles. Stepping back one more time, we can see that I've also linked out to a few other services here. So payroll relies on our cloud database services, so I've linked that service in, as well as our North American network. And if I were to step all the way down to look at the switches that make up this network and then drill into one of the switches, here I can see information about this switch. I can SSH into this particular switch and have that automatically recorded. We can see things like attributes on this resource. Certainly the inventory, in this case, not only of the physical components, but of the software modules. We've done full interface discovery and are providing interface monitoring here on this piece of equipment. As I scroll down, we can see the various monitoring templates that have been applied, and many of these came from our out-of-the-box template library, and many of them as well certainly do have the pre-built best practices for thresholds. And that's really feeding me into a screen that's showing me the various metrics that are available and the graph of those metrics. Now, another added benefit from this view, as you can see, is that I can also direct OpsRamp to automatically back up both the startup and running configs of newly onboarded networking equipment as well. And if I were to click that same topology button that we looked at from vCenter, I'm going to be presented with, in this case, a network topology map. And again, the reason that we're automatically mapping these things out is so that we can provide that better topology-based correlation of downstream alerts. Now, it doesn't just stop here. You've seen vCenter, you've seen the topology map here for my networking equipment. If we keep stepping out here, we're starting to do the same in the application space. So as you can see here, there's a handful of applications that we can automatically map topology for. And we're leveraging here, as you can see on the right, things like learning from inbound and outbound connections to map out these. If I were to extend that into my container infrastructure, here we can see Kubernetes, and I can actually have mapped out my containers. And we can even go so far as mapping out your cloud resources as well. Here we're taking a look at, within this AWS account, for all regions, what's the relationships that exist between my VPCs. And I can't emphasize enough, this is the information we're leveraging to do that better topology-based correlation. Now, another thing that we've got included in here as well, as you can see out to the right, is synthetics. Right? So not only are we monitoring and alerting on the integrity of this application, but we're also doing so on the quality of the application. And so if we drill into synthetics, we can see that it is degraded right now. I actually do have something that's in an unknown state. But if we were to drill, for example, into this case, a portal URL, we can see that we are monitoring that URL for things like response time, lookup time, connect time. We're even monitoring and validating the SSL certificates and can notify the appropriate individuals a configurable amount of time before those SSL certs expire. So we can certainly get out ahead of some of those potential outages that might take place there. Now back to the resource that we logged that issue against. And so we can see up at the top here, downstream, I have this resource. Here's how long it's been down. We've got a critical alert that's coming against that, and that has actually also been ticketed. And in my environment here, I'm ticketing against ServiceNow. But we have pre-built integrations available to everything from like Remedy, Sharewell, Ivanti, Salesforce Desk, Jira. There's many of them out there for which this workflow I'm about to demonstrate would work with. So let's drill into that resource itself. And now from this view, I can start doing this troubleshooting. I can start doing the triage, right? I can see attributes or inventory information on this resource. I can see what software is installed. I can certainly see patch levels here. Has anybody else remoted into this particular resource? And I could certainly launch into any of these recordings. We can see which monitors have been applied to this resource. And actually, these 3 monitors were applied automatically because OpsRamp does bring a policy-based method of delivering these monitoring templates. So next week, next year, you name it, if you were to spool up another resource of this type, we're going to automatically find that and we'll start monitoring against that. That certainly helps organizations eliminate the potential blind spots that exist within their data centers or within their cloud estates, or even both. Now, one other benefit I can show you from here, which I've turned off in this particular example that we're stepping through, but if we take a look at all of the different metrics that we're monitoring, and we scroll out to the right, what you can see here is that in the event of breach, I can attach a runbook automation to take place. So I might say, hey, look, if a service stops responding, OpsRamp can identify that and we can automatically try to restart that service. And if that's successful, we can go ahead and update and even mark that as auto-healed. We support many different script languages. Chances are you've already got a handful of operational RBAs that you're leveraging. So really you can bring those into the tool and then we can execute those. Now that can be set not only at an individual resource, but I could also set those at the template level. One of the more popular things I've seen of late would be organizations having OpsRamp execute certain troubleshooting steps. Maybe we're going to ping a resource, we're going to do a trace route, we're going to do an NS lookup. There's certain things that we're going to do, and then we're going to scrape the results of that to populate into the alert itself or even the ticket that we open. That way a technician can start a little further along the path in the troubleshooting. Now let's step back to the overview for a second here, and I'm going to drill into these alerts that have come in against this resource. Now we can actually see that right now this has happened just once. Let's make this look a little more realistic because I'm going to fire another alert. Whether you're dealing with a flapping switch port or a particular outage where every 2 minutes another alert is generated, we don't want those to create tickets or create events, right? Especially if it's the same thing. And so one of the things that OpsRamp does provide is the deduplication of alerts. So as you can see, I've fired off another alert, but that hasn't changed my alert count. And so if I step into that now, we can see here that this has happened twice. So certainly we are deduplicating that. Now I'm going to go ahead and drill into the alert itself. And you'll recall at the beginning of the video where I started off in an email inbox. Had I clicked that link in the email inbox, this is really where I would have landed, right? This is the alert browser or the view of the alert itself. Now, if you're familiar with traditional monitoring tools, they're not very actionable when you get to the alert itself, but that's not the case here in OpsRamp. And so what you can see here is that I've got details of this alert. I can see total occurrences, so there's the deduplication. Had we correlated this alert, either topology-based or one of the other methods that we leverage to do intelligent alert correlation, that would also be visible to me here. You'll have to navigate and check out our full platform demonstration to dive deeper into that area. But I can also see a history of alerts against this resource, any incidents that are open against this resource as a result of this alert. Out on the right-hand side, I can certainly still run scripts or commands against the resource. I can still, in this case, SSH or RDP into this resource. I could even drill on out and go straight to that resource to do some additional troubleshooting as well. I'll also call your attention here where we can see that which impacted business service groups does this resource participate in? So we can also troubleshoot those and further understand impact. Now, one of the things we hear time and time again from IT operations folks and from DevOps folks is they don't really like IT service management, especially if you've moved into more of an agile approach. They feel like ITSM slows them down, right? Why do I have to swivel chair over to a service management tool to keep track of what I'm doing when I've been primarily tasked with restoring service as quickly as possible? And so for those people, we've created here in OpsRamp an operational incident. So we can see now I have multiple tabs open, so I can still go back to the alert and do some troubleshooting and then update what I'm doing every step of the way, but I'm doing that in the same tool. And so from here, why don't we populate this? Hey folks on the service desk, we see this issue in the NOC. We're working to get that resolved as soon as possible. And we'll go ahead and we'll submit this as open. Now, as you can also see, I could add notes. I can attach additional resources to this. Maybe I'm going to farm out certain things via to-do here or assignments. And I could also even get to the point where I can even see the status here. Now, this is not going to replace your ServiceNow or your Remedy or your big ITSM tool. But what it enables is that my folks in the NOC can stay in their operations platform and keep working as quickly as they can to restore service, while at the same time updating your single source of truth, which typically is your ITSM tool. Meanwhile, if we flip over here into, in this case, ServiceNow, let's do a quick refresh here. And we can see that today we actually have a ticket that's in progress, and that's the ticket that OpsRamp has created. So let's drill into that ticket itself. Now there's a lot of information here that's automatically been populated. And you can see here things like the CI, certainly description information. We can see here's that operational incident in OpsRamp, as well as I've configured this to present a link back. But as I scroll down, you can see here now that this is preserving that collaborative nature, right? Where my folks in the NOC are letting us know on the service desk that, hey, you know what, they're working on this. And I might respond back, right, awesome, keep us in the loop. And there we go. Now, to see this all the way through, let's say that in an effort to restore service, we're going to go ahead and we're going to reboot this server. So that typically would require a change. And rather than having you watch me fill out an entire change record, let's actually just pop over here for a second. And we can see in this case the change record's been filled out. There's a couple things that I want to point your attention to. The first is that we can see the CI is populated, of course, in this change record. And also I've got start and end date. Now you can configure OpsRamp to take a look if you wanted requested or planned. In my environment, I'm keying off of actual. And so from here, I'm going to go ahead and we're going to update this. All right, so now I have a change that has been submitted. Now meanwhile, if we flip back to OpsRamp, and we head back to that resource, we can see right now next maintenance is no data available. Let's go ahead and refresh this resource. And now I can see that we have a maintenance window, and that's actually come back from ServiceNow. If I drill into that, we can see, hey, look, you know what, we need to reboot the server to resolve an issue, and we've got the scheduled start time and end time. What we're essentially doing here with the OpsRamp platform is we are, from your ITSM tool, pulling in the impacted CIs as well as the change window itself. And OpsRamp will automatically suppress alerts against these resources during the change window. So that means that I don't have to remember every time we go through a change, oh, I've got to go to my old monitoring tool. I have to mute those alerts, because what I don't want to have happen is the process of solving the issue has created a new alert, which created a new ticket, and now I'm caught in somewhat of a loop, right? So we are taking care of that as well at the API level. Now, ultimately, this alert's going to come in as okay, right? We're going to reboot the server. That's going to fix things for us. And if we go through here and we do a refresh, here we can see that that resource is green again. If I head back to my dashboard and we do a refresh, my payroll application is available again. And if I flip back over here to my ITSM tool, we can also see now that I no longer have any incidents that are in progress. So we have also marked that as resolved. Of course, all of these workflows are configurable. All of the notifications and escalations are configurable. But what I just demonstrated to you was taking down a resource. I received an email. The folks in the NOC saw that from the dashboard. That dashboard, they were able to quickly drill into the actual impacted service or application. They could then further double-click into each of those different technologies that supported that application, right? Be it vCenter, be it cloud, be it the networking, the synthetics, all of that in one place. When they found that particular impacted resource, they were able to double-click deeper on the resource itself, right? And then start to do some of that troubleshooting and triage. You saw that they could access that alert and all that information with the deduplication and the correlation from that one view. And ultimately, the folks in the NOC were able to update the folks on the service desk without having to swivel chair over to a different console. And finally, once we got to a change, we were able to pull that data back into OpsRamp to automatically suppress those alerts during the change window. I think that's a tremendous demonstration of reduced MTTR, right? That flow from one console is significantly shorter than the traditional approach of the war room. So I'd like to thank you for joining this video today. And again, for more information, visit us at www.opsramp.com.